Hey, everybody, welcome to Outlier on Air, episode 418. This is the podcast where we sit down with founders, disruptors, and mavens. On today's episode, we have Alison Moreno. She is the founder of Lipstick and Vinyl. With a career marked by a record of smash sales expectations for some of the most successful podcast networks in the industry, Alison brings a rare combination of deep industry experience and expertise, along with a vast monetization success to Lipstick and Vinyl. Allyson has helped pioneer the podcast industry and has generated over $90 million in radio and podcast advertising revenue over the course of her career. I think you're really going to enjoy Allyson. She is the real deal. She's warm, she's kind, she's smart. She's trying to build something that's amazing with Lipstick and Vinyl. I think that you're really going to enjoy the journey, right? Where she's been, where she is, and what she's trying to accomplish in the next 5 to 10 years. She even opens up about some of the things that she struggles with, some of the things that she's good with, and everything in between as well. So I really enjoyed this episode personally. I think you're going to enjoy it as well. So take a listen. Allyson, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ever.
We're excited to have you just because I think you're doing some cool things in the podcasting industry, and we're always looking for outliers. We're always looking for interesting people to talk to. So I met you at the Outlier Podcast Festival in LA this past September. You were gracious enough to accept our invitation to come and participate in the panel discussion. Got some great reviews. Everybody seemed to enjoy it. People were engaged with your message, with the things that that panel kind of brought to the table. And so, normally I try to connect with outliers, with people that I like, that I'm interested in. And of course, you were one of the standouts at our festival. So thank you again for letting us invite you to our show.
Well, that's a lovely, lovely welcome. I appreciate being an outlier, and I always have. I feel like an outlier in a lot of senses in my life and in my company. For starters, it's called Lipstick and Vinyl, and that doesn't say anything podcast really, but I think it does show that say that we're women, and we are a smart company, just happen to be a bunch of women. So in that way, we're an outlier. In the way that I sat on a panel wearing a scuba dress with like rainbow piping, that's also a small bit of outlying.
That's right. It's funny. You guys came in, and you and partner / associate / friend, they came in for the panel, and you guys classied the place up. You came in there with I don't know, this presence. As soon as you walked in, kind of people took notice, and obviously you have the goods with the background in podcasting and radio, and it showed. So again, thank you for that. But let's get into the name first. Lipstick and Vinyl. Let's talk about the company, what it is, how it works.
So Lipstick and Vinyl is an advertising and I'd say development and monetization firm for amplifying the voices of the underrepresented. So I started the company in April of this year, so 2018, and set out to first bring a group of podcasters who are outliers, meaning they don't have representation, they're not hosted by white men, and they are telling new stories. So the mission is really to grow the lofty idea is grow the podcast pool beyond the 17% of people that currently listen weekly, beyond those 17% of Americans. And I strongly believe the way that can be accomplished is by having new voices that speak to new audiences with different points of view. People are desperate to hear people that sound like them. And so that is the mission of Lipstick and Vinyl, to be able to develop and support those that have stories to tell and an audience, so desperate to hear them. So it's obviously underrepresented is a big, huge, wide net, and it organically has happened. And so I've followed that path. It's been really strong, brilliant women that have come into my life as podcasters, as partners, as friends. They're incredible journalists. They believe so thoroughly, they live so thoroughly their mission. And so I've learned a lot from them and been inspired by them. and want them to succeed as much as possible. Succeed meaning find an audience and make a living.
So you talk about the underrepresented. These you're talking about just women specifically, or are
Yeah.
you working with? Yeah, okay.
So right now it's focused, the business is focused on females. That is, as a small company, as a startup, I can't talk to or serve every underrepresented group. But as we grow beyond, the female vertical, of course, we'll look to people of color, people that have maybe a different socioeconomic status than the average podcast listener, and people in the LGBTQ community, because not many people are talking to them in media. And so while maybe we don't have time, or maybe it's more difficult to right the ship that is, news media on a broadcast level, with podcasts, it's like this wide open space that we can still define in large part and make an impact and make this mass media mass that's more diverse.
You know what I like about this mission is that, in my mind, there are so many good shows, good stories being told, but I don't know about them. Right? Where do I go to find these amazing stories? Right? I like you mentioned, I think earlier, podcasting in general, kind of middle-aged white guys, right?
Right.
And nothing wrong with that, I guess, with people with middle-aged white guys trying to have shows and do their own thing. But I want to hear a diverse group of voices and a diverse group of stories. And I like that you're helping those stories come to life. And so when you say you're helping them, when you're saying you're trying to get them to that next level like that, what does that look like? What are you helping
What
them with exactly?
Sure. Sometimes it's very basic at the start. It is believing in them and reaching out to them after, digging and finding their show, or meeting them, through another podcaster, and believing in them and encouraging them, and then selling advertising in their show. And it's really an honor for me to have the shows. There are about 17 shows in the network so far, and they
By the way,
are.
that's a big deal. You only started, I mean, less than a year ago.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I think it's I'm very proud of what we've done so far, and the shows. That's why I feel so grateful to the shows. I'm truly honored to represent them in the marketplace, because they make me so proud, and they are who make up the brand of Lipstick and Vinyl, and they're great shows. And so, I have heard, and I like the saying that it takes 20 years to make an overnight success.
Uh,
And so I expect a lot and faster than, what's happening now, but it takes what it takes. And so right now, to grow the shows, now that we've got a solid amount that cross promotion can be effective, it it's starting to happen. So shows will recommend other shows, and we're going to have our first one show be a guest on another show, because in my experience in podcasting, that started before Serial, so I feel very, very veteran. um,
nice.
yeah, there's a great deal of value in having another podcaster recommend you. And that is a great way to grow an audience. And that's why companies like Wondery, for example, spend thousands of dollars a month to advertise on other podcasts, because it works so well. But again, that's staying inside the pool of those 17% of already podcast listeners. What is really great is when, like, we have podcasters from, for instance, YouTube, that have now started a podcast that's entirely different content, but they're able to do videos that show their viewers exactly how to listen to a podcast, and holding their hand and bringing them over to this other media. And that's really exciting to me.
Okay, so if somebody is listening, that kind of fits the bill of what you're looking for your network. What's the process? They come to you, or you find them, and are you helping them produce and find advertisers and help them monetize? What does that whole picture look like?
The picture that's happened so far is everybody's come to me with a story. My superpower, I think, is really is really elevating and podcastizing if need be, and then monetizing, selling advertising so that they have more resources to put into the show, and then consulting on whatever part that they need. So for instance, a podcast started, I worked with a management company, and they manage the old school OG YouTube stars. And so one of their talent, her name's Rachel Ballinger, she had never podcasted, and we wanted to start a podcast for her. So from the beginning, and being a YouTuber, she wanted to DIY everything, and she's incredible at making it so easy, and her ad reads are fantastic. But along the way, I've been able to coach her in, not just in the beginning of what equipment she needs and where she needs to be for a hosting platform, and what she needs to do to be on, to get her show up on iTunes with the right artwork and so on and so forth. She's just made it so easy. It's incredible how DIY she is, and her ads are fantastic. She does a show with her mom, and they are so charming together. It's called All Things Internet, and so I found her through her managers. I've found a couple others through managers, and then, but people certainly come to me, and mostly it's they've found me through their friend or fellow podcaster who's already working with me. But yeah, if you generally you have started a show at this point, again, being a young company, once we get to the point where we have the revenue and have the resources to support shows creation from the jump, from the very, very beginning, I really look forward to doing that. That's just not going to be for another 24 months, probably.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it really is. And so that's why in the meantime, right now, I'm so grateful to the folks that have me represent them. And I absolutely love doing it. I'm very proud to do it. So yeah, they'll give me, I'll have a conversation with a new show, and we'll talk about what they talk about. I'll walk them through what an advertiser really finds attractive for buying their show, and what will fetch them the most premium cost per thousand. So in our shows, we currently only offer two 60-second mid-roll units, and that's not a lot, but that's the beauty and the value of podcasting. The advertiser gets placement in a very uncluttered environment, and the shows can veto any advertiser they want. So they're only talking about products that they really use
Good.
or
That's
services.
huge.
Yeah, because it's so, I mean, again, I love podcasting another reason, because it's really authentic. You can hear a mile away if someone is, not telling the truth, or, just not, it's just, it's in your ears, or in right inside your head when you listen. And so I work with people who are telling the truth, and people who are on a quest for the truth and sharing that with other people. So same goes for advertisers. And so the advertising community has been really responsive for that reason, but I think also because they know I'm a place to come to reach women. And that's a brand that's been established kind of not by me
Yeah.
or us, but in the marketplace, which feels really cool, because there really isn't a network that is, there are starting to be some, but there are not networks run by women and for women that, are substantial in size, or really that exist.
Yeah, I like what you're doing. You're niching down, right? And you're not the network for everybody and anybody, right? You certainly have
Right.
your own group that you're trying to help, and obviously there are a ton of advertisers that want to be in front of that audience. And so I think you're doing it right. I think that's obviously you're doing it right. Look at the success that you're having already. So with starting a business, startup, difficult in general, no matter what industry you're in, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah.
Being in podcasting, even though it's been around a while, it's just still a baby industry, in my opinion.
Yes.
That must have been difficult to kind of go all in podcasting. Tell us about that.
It's difficult now.
Yeah, for sure.
It is difficult because of the fact that I really started with no capital. I have been, running the business, a bootstrapped business, and it's quite difficult. And that's, I think, part of what makes me an outlier is I wanted to do it anyway because I felt so strongly and still feel so strongly that I've worked for a lot of other networks in podcasting, and then in network radio. I spent 5 years working for Westwood One before my podcasting career began, and I was continually told as a seller to stay in my lane.
Oh,
And so that finally, I turned 40 in October, and it took that long for me to have the confidence and the experience and the relationships to realize I don't want to stay in that lane. Like, I really enjoy, again, as a salesperson, that's what my career has been, before this. Uh, like, I want to have a relationship with the talent, and I want to support them and put the right advertisers in their show, because if they're happy, the advertisers and the listeners are happy and everybody wins. And so those are the types of situations that were more difficult for me to create working for someone else, just because of the nature of how they ran their business. And so being super determined and super in love with this idea certainly can be silly, and I could be blinded by that. And, I'm not guaranteed success by any means, but believing so much in what I was doing, I jumped without a net anyway. I know that, I know what I'm doing. And it's just really at this point a matter of surviving and being able to do that while the network grows, while the business grows.
and so
Because
10 months into it, what have been some of the biggest challenges, some of the things that you would have tweaked or changed if you could go back?
let's see, I probably would have started with a bigger amount of money in my savings account, for certain. And I, I mean, I probably would have started just running more quickly, although I always run quickly, like in the beginning. So my last job working for someone else it ended in March 30th of this year. So I took a month probably to iterate on what the idea was going to be for the network, like deciding, yes, I'm going to, start my own network. And so it was June 6th that the company officially was a company. But it did take a lot of interviews kind of like this with people that I trust in the business, and people that are adjacent to the business. My first idea was to focus on YouTube personalities, because I've seen it work before, working when I worked for Midroll, for instance, that a YouTube personality can definitely succeed in podcasting and bring solidly 10% of their subscriber number over to podcasting, which in podcasts is significant if
Sure.
you have a couple of million subscribers. So I saw that work. I have a good relationship with a management company. And what I realized after starting to do that was, when I was telling people about what my business was, pitching the business, I didn't sound, because I don't think it wasn't something I deeply believed in. It was more just like, this would be good business because it will create big audience quickly, and that's how you can make some money in podcasts. So rather than make the business decision, here's where I don't know if I went wrong or right, but I finally was able to hone in on, that's not what I'm passionate about. That's not where I have the most relationships. And I started working with a partner that runs an online magazine called Dame Magazine, and it's run by this older woman, older than me. I shouldn't say older, that sounds terrible. More experienced than
Sure,
me,
sure,
and
sure.
running her own publication. And she has all these brilliant journalists working with her. And so she was really the start of, hey, here's this great show. It's called The 51. And here's all these other great shows with, the other women on the platform that are making podcasts. And so that's really been the core of the foundation of the network is through Jennifer Reitman and her dame writers, journalists. So they make up a good solid group of the podcasts on the network. And what I would have done differently is, started with a rich family.
Nice.
That
You and I
and I
both.
would have been a young man from, an Ivy League school
Mhm.
when going into meetings with potential investors, and I would know the investor parlance and the words that are used in those rooms much more smoothly than, say, I do even now. I yeah. So
Yeah.
I would have started with more money and more time.
Let's. I want to talk about one of the things that you just brought up, right? A female in a mostly male dominated industry, like we talked about, that by itself must be difficult. Do you feel like you are taken seriously, even though reading your bio and the things that you've done, $90 million in radio and podcasting advertising sales throughout your career? I mean, that's a big deal, nothing to laugh at, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
you obviously know what you're doing, but you are female, attractive. You're walking into a room like this. What does that environment look like for you?
It is absolutely different than if I were a man. I know that. And there are some meetings that I go into where I feel as though I've been pat on the head.
There
Oh,
you go.
thank you. This is adorable. I'll listen to you, but I'm never going to think about investing in you. And as a salesperson, I'm used to hearing no, like a lot of the time. But when you're going into, like, I hired a CFO on demand, not full time, but he's a great man who used to be the CFO for places as diverse as City Search and Tender Greens, the restaurant. And he now works with CEOs like me, even though I'm his smallest. And so he's helped me to close the chasm between knowing I need money to do the next thing and what I need to give or show in exchange for what to an investor. And so he's been coaching me. And even with his coaching and even with him joining me on these meetings, it is, I just think that, people aren't used to investing in women. And because I have had this experience, I probably focus on it and find other like stories, whether it's the woman from Run the Runway or Sophia Amorosa. Like,
Hmm.
it's just from Girl Boss. It's crazy how much work we still have to do as women to be taken seriously, to for people to be able to trust us, for us to flow through as easily as, again, a white man.
And I like
So
I like that you're pushing forward no matter what.
yeah, because I really believe in it, and I really refuse to let the fact that I am a woman, and a woman who does not come from a family that has money at all. And so I don't have like a family network of individuals I can go to invest at the level that I am looking for investment. And I don't have a crazy Ivy League alumni network. I went to Cal State University Fullerton, and I don't want those factors to stop me from being able to accomplish this mission of amplifying the voices of other people that are underrepresented and maybe haven't had the same opportunity to be heard as people that have had more advantages. So that's really strong in driving me too.
Yeah, I think you're able, obviously, to relate to the people that you're working with, and so I think they feel comfortable with you and your story and the things that you can accomplish. And so, despite those things, those things would have been nice to have, but I think obviously you're making it without that network, without that money, and it's going to pay off. I mean, it's already paying off, and you're making some noise in the podcasting scene, so you're doing something right.
That's very nice of you to say. That feels really good because, sometimes toiling away, you don't really recognize that for yourself. So thank you, Ever, for saying that.
Let's talk about with this specific thing that you're working on now with the network and what you're trying to create. It feels like a chicken before the egg type of dilemma that maybe that I see maybe it's not the case, but let's talk about it. You need creators, right?
Mm-hmm.
Podcasters. You need listeners. You need advertisers / brands.
Mm-hmm.
What comes first?
That is a great question. And that's what you really honed in on, something that's very difficult. It takes resources to first build a really great show, even if someone is very talented. You just put a microphone in front of them and they have never podcasted before. That doesn't ensure success. So the answer for me in my network has been, it starts with it started literally with one show, and it was very hard, even though I'd been dealing with the main advertising agencies that buy podcast advertising for 4 years. That didn't mean, I was surprised it wasn't a given that they answered the phone and said, Allison, we'd love to do business with you now that you
Sure.
have one show,
Yeah, yeah.
And obviously they have many, many clients with many larger shows to choose from. So the way it worked for me was, slowly over the months, just added more shows to the network. And I have to thank the shows because they have all been so patient, because they weren't sold. They didn't have ads in them for the first month or two, or 3 in some cases, and because maybe they were really small. And so it was only after getting together a group of shows, say when I had 10 shows that were all similar in the demographic that they would reach, did I start doing business with the major agencies. And even though the shows are relatively small in the whole world of podcasts, they are filled with advertising now. So for me, it started with other people's great voices and shows that existed or were just developing. And that's how it started. And it had to start with a group of them, because with one show, it's a tough road to hoe. I would not recommend that.
And so how does it work? So a sponsor comes in, and I think you said you had 17 shows now. Do they have placement in all the shows, or is it customized? How does that work exactly?
No, I like to make it really, really difficult on myself. And in my experience, because I also worked for, so when I was at Midroll, everything was a host read. And that's where I learned, and that's what I really love and believe in. And so when I worked at Acast after that, it's a podcast platform that is designed to be bought in a network fashion, a group of shows. It was really difficult to sell to advertisers because the value proposition of podcasts is the very personal connection the host has with the show. So podcast buyers and advertisers are used to picking show by show. Nobody, in my experience, has bought a network, and I don't try to force them to, because again, you lose that. And it's not scalable at this point, that certainly not just with one person, with me doing everything. I need another body as soon as I can, but it's very important. So yeah, so when I sell show by show. Even if the show's small, I still wasn't able to do that effectively until I had an offering. So I can sell the smaller show now that it's within a group of other shows, but people aren't necessarily buying the rest of the shows, if that makes sense.
Sure. Now, your background is obviously in podcasting, but I think more specifically in sales, right? I mean, this is your bread
Yes.
and butter. This is what you're good at. This is what I see anyway. But let me ask you, with everything that you've done in your career up until this point, I guess, what are you the best at? If it's the one thing that we're going to be like, yep, Allison, go to her for this. What is it?
I am the best at connecting with people and listening to what is important to them. So that translates into bringing the right sponsors to the right shows, and respecting everyone I do business with. I've worked for brands like Intuit and PacSun in over the course of my career, and I've also worked in network radio, which introduced me to loads of different types of businesses. And what I've found, like whether they be automotive companies or um, uh, services like Netflix, or just so many different types of businesses. And every time, what works is a really personal approach to solving their needs, the advertiser's needs, with a very custom solution. So no one solution fits all, very personal and very designed to meet their particular goals. And same thing with the podcasters. So I guess the way you would sum that up is really caring about each party and making sure each party is feeling good about what they're doing and being true to what they're doing, and facilitating those interactions, being in the middle of different spokes and translating an artist's language to a brand and vice versa, so that
And
everyone
that's
comes.
difficult to do, right?
That's, I think, my superpower.
Yeah.
That's what I love to do, because I like to be like, right now I'm like putting my arm out like I'm halfway hugging a tree with one arm. And so like the artist, the talent is behind my arm, like close to my body, and
Uh-huh.
then they are free to create, and the business side is outside my arm, and that's what I deal with for them. I want them to have no worries at all about the business side. I want them to focus on what they do best, telling stories and making their podcast, and I handle the business part. So I
Yeah.
really love protecting the artist.
And that's a powerful position to be in, right?
Oh,
Don't you think? I mean, let the artists do what they do best, right? Don't let them worry about selling or the business side of it, because I think that's where they lose, right? If they're trying to do all of it,
yes.
it's not going to work.
It's hard to sell yourself. I have
Absolutely.
friends who are artists in different capacities, and it is completely a different mindset and skill set, and even like in your heart. Like, if you're selling your baby, so to speak, and you're selling something that is you, that you created, and whether it's a sculpture, a dance, a podcast, a painting, you shouldn't have to be out there selling it. You need someone to hear the feedback, whether it be positive or negative, and then deliver that to you in a way that supports what you're doing.
Agreed.
And so that's what I like to do.
And I think we're in similar positions. I consider myself a broker as well, right? I know a lot of people. I like a lot of people, um, and I can sell people's either products or ideas, missions, all that good stuff all day long. And it's something that I enjoy, and I'd like to think that I do it well. But when it comes to trying to sell things that I've created, not that I consider myself, too much of an artist or anything like that, but things that are my babies,
Yeah.
I freeze up. I don't know how to do it. Or maybe I have fear of doing it, of sounding, you know, sleazy and like, hey, come look at this, come buy this. I don't know how to do it. For other people, all day long.
I'm so the same way. And I mean, that's how it has felt too so selling advertising is so easy for me, just like you said. And when I started meeting with investors, when I was ready to, and had a deck and had a CFO with me, it was surprisingly an entirely new thing to try to be comfortable with. And I'm still not comfortable with it, because it's more like selling my own
Yeah.
idea, my own, this is what I created, and asking money for it. And I'm certainly like on, baby deer legs still, because it's like, I was just so surprised at how uncomfortable
Sure.
and such a new skill it was going to be to sell in terms of getting investment. So I totally identify with that. It's also, you're very vulnerable to the feedback, because you're
Agreed.
on the front line,
Agreed.
versus if somebody else is doing it for you, you don't, they can
Yeah.
hopefully buffer that.
I can, if we get negative feedback, I can just, to the people that I represent, I can say, it's just business, nothing personal. And, I can say that all day long. But then when it
Right.
comes to me, I'm like, oh no, they hate me. I'm devastated. I'm never going to leave the house again.
Yeah, I'm stupid. I'm
That's
done. This
right.
idea will never work.
That's right.
What am I thinking? Oh my God, I need to totally change everything in my life. Yeah, I definitely have those days. I don't know, 50% of the time.
Well, you're doing it and doing it well. Let's talk about the network again for a sec. It's kind of a, bootstrapping it, like you mentioned, but it sounds like you're obviously trying to raise money. Where are you in that position? Is that something that you're going to continue to try to do?
That's a really good question, because that's something I've had to like assess recently. It was something that I started and really focused on once John Cherry, that's the CFO, came on board, and it's almost like a full-time job.
Mhm.
And so it'll be like, a week I would focus on that side of things, and then come back to running the business, which is, lots of work, because I sell each show individually, and because each show needs different advertiser copy. And, so I'm the trafficking department, I'm the accounting department. People do enjoy getting paid. And, so it's been a really difficult thing to balance. And when I started the process of, outside investment, it was maybe September, and it took a while to get the business plan together. I thought I had a business plan. I had, goals and benchmarks and things, but in terms of like CEO or CFO-ifying it, took a while, and it's been me that's been getting in the way. Like, I am so nervous about it, and the calls that I have had, or meetings I have had, I certainly don't show up. I haven't shown up like I would and I do in, selling other folks, selling the network. So it's been me that's been getting in the way. And so then I think, oh, I don't want to focus on that. But if I want to grow and make a noise and really be a player and be able to be a home for podcasters with something else to say, it's something I have to do, and like, I'm trying to raise $350,000 is the goal. And that will primarily be to hire a salesperson that would do a lot of the work I'm doing now, to hire an administrative sort of traffic production type person to work with all things technical and all things copy, and then also hire a development person so that we can begin to tell our own story. So that's what the majority of the money would be used to do. And then also there would be money to support the shows on the network a little bit more in terms of advertising or more production help. And the CFO seems to think that that's all that we would need, and that would last us about 3 years.
Oh, really? That long? That's good.
So yeah, because of the way that we've like projected growth, and it's cool because I made the projections before I started the business, but I'm ahead of the revenue number,
That's good.
and I'm ahead of the shows I represent number. And so it's like a graph that goes up and to the right. And so that's why it's been discouraging when I go to investor meetings and that's not there. Like you were saying before, chicken, egg, people don't want to give you money to build something until you've built
Mhm.
something. And so it's a parallel process.
So other than, as we start to wrap this up, other than the money, the revenue, all that stuff, what keeps you up at night right now about the company?
That's what keeps me up at night,
Really? Yeah.
truly, is being able to keep a roof over my head, truly, while growing, because it's going in the right direction. It's so going well, and I want to stay alive long enough to see it through. That
Good.
keeps me up at night.
Well, it's legit. I mean, it's what most entrepreneurs, most people that are creating things worry about, and it can be very, very stressful, right? I think it paralyzes some of us into not doing exactly what we need to be doing, or second
Oh,
guessing ourselves all the time.
yes, you're so spot on. Yes. I didn't even realize that until you said it out loud, but I do definitely admit to that. I will scroll forever somewhere just to get out of my having to do what I need to face.
Agreed. Agreed. Now, when we have you back on the show in 3 years, what are we going to be talking about?
We're going to be talking about how much of an impact this company has made on the voices in the media. So, for example, right now there are 51% of society is female, and women only account for uh, 1/3 of the newsroom leaders, like the heads of newsrooms, for instance. So that will look more equitable. Um, women will be all kinds of women will be heard. We'll be talking about all the projects that have been optioned into other media, TV to T-shirts to, movies, and we will be talking about how our charitable efforts for women have improved their lives, and we'll have a whole bunch of shows doing good things.
That's
It'll just
exciting.
be a problem at night of like, where do I use all this money that I've got
That's
to
right.
help people?
That's well, we're looking forward to it. It's going to be an interesting journey, and we're going to follow you every step of the way. We're big fans of the things that you're doing there with lipstick and vinyl. So congratulations.
Well, ever, I am a big fan of yours, and you are so nice. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Of course, I love to talk about myself, and you've made that so easy. So I really
My work is
appreciate
done, and good. I'm glad.
I really appreciate you, and can't wait to see you again at the next festival.
Absolutely. For those that are listening, they want to get to know you a little bit more, the company, all that good stuff. Where can we find you online?
It's really easy and short to type out. Maybe I would have redone that, but it's it's all spelled out: lipstick and vinyl.com, lipstickandvinyl.com. I also am on Instagram with my name, Alison Moreno, but I think a good place to start would be lipstickandvinyl.com.
Perfect. So Outliers, you can go to outlierhq.com. That's outlierhq.com. First of all, subscribe to the podcast, rate, review it, share it with your friends. But there you're going to find Allison's website, links to social media. Feel free to share it. Obviously, she's the real deal. She brought the heat today, so we really appreciate it. Allison, we're big fans, and we're going to continue to follow you. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, Ever. It was a pleasure.
Outliers, we'll talk to you tomorrow. I think you're really going to enjoy Allyson. She is the real deal. She's warm, she's kind, she's smart. She's trying to build something that's amazing with lipstick and vinyl. I think that you're really going to enjoy the. I think that you're really going to enjoy the journey, right? Where she's been, where she is, and what she's trying to accomplish in the next 5 to 10 years. She even opens up about some of the things that she struggles with, some of the things that she's good with, and everything in between as well. So I really enjoyed this episode personally. I think you're going to enjoy it as well. So take a listen.